Let's talk about piracy.
Okay.
How have you been affected?
Well, I don't really know, right? If you ask, like, how much money would the game make with or without piracy? There's no anti-piracy measures. We put it up DRM free on the first day, and then even Steam is sort of DRM'd, but not really. You can get around it pretty easily. And we sold very well, like we're a financially successful game. But, of course, we were also on pirate sites, like bam, immediately, with a lot of downloads. And I didn't measure it, but in general, when PC games measure the level of piracy, it's generally between 85 and 95%, depending on the game and the way that they measured it, right? Which means that almost nobody who plays your game on the PC paid for it. And that's just the reality of how it is. But the people who do pay for it is enough people, hopefully, to keep you in business. However, for many indie developers, that's not true. They don't stay in business, but then would they stay in business if people didn't pirate their game, or would those people just have not bought it? I don't know. But here's the thing I like to point out to people, right? Because I'm not really anti-piracy. I'm not really pro-piracy. I pirated stuff when I was a kid because I didn't feel like I had a choice. You know, my mom wouldn't really buy video games for me. I actually, one time in like a Walden Books or something, I stole a physical copy of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego from the store. And it wasn't even a good game.
I think the statute of limitations is probably more.
Yeah. I did some bad stuff when I was a kid.
You told me earlier that you were a pathological liar for a while.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, that was not good.
But you don't do that anymore, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But what I like to, 85%, 95% piracy, what does that mean? Because not all pirates are going to buy the game, obviously, right? But if 10% of pirates bought the game,
your revenue on the PC
would almost double. Yeah, it's close to double, which would be amazing. That would keep so many more developers in business. So it's not ridiculous to presume that 10% of people who pirate something might have bought it if they couldn't pirate it. And so it's just, But all this said, so all this is true, and I run a business, and I should be very concerned,
if not
with
indignant.
That. Yeah, well, I'm, a little bit. But in reality, I don't want my mind to be there very often, because my mind can only be so many places at once, and I'd prefer to live in the ethereal design realm where the ideas are beautiful and I'm discovering
things. Up in the
things.
Sky Lounge, right, overlooking the island.
Sure.
Watching the people screw up the speed run for 100 times.
So if I'm sitting there being angry about piracy or something, then I'm not going to have nice game design ideas, or even just forget mood or anything, just opportunity cost. How do you spend your time? What are you thinking about, right? So I don't think there's that much to say there. I mean, piracy is what it is. You kind of have to deal with it. I wish we lived in a world where it wasn't such a big problem, but the solutions are also really bad. Like, if you lock your game down with DRM that's nasty, you're inevitably going to make the game not work for people who actually bought it. And so then you start talking about acceptable losses, like how many actual people am I going to make the game not work for in order to prevent pirates from having it under some vague theory that maybe I'll sell more of my copies of my game to people who would have pirated, which nobody has good numbers for anyway, right? And I think there's an ethical issue there. As an engineer, I think that we should have some kind of code of ethics for computer scientists, and we don't. But what that code of ethics should say is something about respecting the time of the people who use your software and respecting their quality of life, which is absolutely not done in software almost ever right now. Especially understanding the branching factor of when you make something that's inconvenient or that people have to fiddle with to get working, and then you release that out to 1 million people. If it takes 20 minutes to get it working, you've wasted 20 million minutes of people's life, right? That is an ethical issue. If you could have avoided that by doing, let's say it took you 100 hours of work to fix that. That's way less than 20 million minutes. I don't know how many hours 20 million minutes is, right? It's hundreds of thousands of hours, right? Wait. Anyway, it's a lot of hours. It's more than a couple hundred hours. So, so that's an issue. And so then bringing that back to DRM, right? Software is terrible today already. If you try as hard as possible, like on PC, we tried as hard as we could to make the game work for as many people as possible. We ran it daily on a dozen or more machines in our office with different configurations for 7 years, and you release it into the world and it has all these problems, right? How many more problems is it okay to add? It already doesn't work, right? It's already a pile of garbage. So you've got to clean up the pile of garbage. You shouldn't be thinking about making more garbage, right? Especially intentionally making more garbage, which is what DRM is. DRM is putting more ways in for your thing to fail. That is what it is. That's what it's designed for. And that's a problem. On the other hand, we may end up in a world where if you don't do that, nobody will ever buy your thing, and then you can't ever build games anymore that aren't things that somebody does in their spare time, right? A thing, like I said, we had a rather big team working on The Witness. You know, there's 3D artists, there's architects, there's programmers, there's sound design people. There's just a lot of people. And if you can't bring all those people together for years to work on something in concert by paying them, then you can't make things of this scope. It just won't happen. You might still have games, but it's like, it's maybe whatever I could make in my spare time while I'm working a job at an advertising funded website or whatever, right? So if people like ambitious games, then we need to do something, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe we don't need to do anything. I don't want to be alarmist, right? Maybe it's fine. But it's just, it's complicated, and I don't know what the right answer is, actually.